Marcus Chun watched the small feline creature pace restlessly around the cargo bay of his salvaged ship. 3 weeks had passed since he'd found the abandoned cub on the dead world of Xerion Prime, and the little beast had grown considerably. What started as a kitten no bigger than his fist now stood knee-high, its midnight black fur shimmering with an almost metallic sheen under the ship's artificial lighting. The creature's eyes had changed too. Where once they glowed a soft amber, now they burned with an intense golden fire that seemed to pierce straight through him. Marcus had named her Shadow, though he suspected that name would need updating soon. Nothing about this animal remained shadowy or subtle. Computer, run a genetic analysis on the biological sample from yesterday, Marcus commanded, settling into his pilot's chair. The cub had scratched him during their daily training session, drawing blood. He'd saved some for testing, hoping to understand what exactly he'd rescued. Analysis complete, Captain Chun. The ship's AI responded in its crisp, mechanical tone. Results are unprecedented. Marcus frowned. His salvaged ship's computer had access to genetic databases from across the known galaxy. Very little qualified as unprecedented. Explain. The specimen contains genetic markers from the Zalarian Empress bloodline, specifically the extinct royal predator class. However, the DNA has been artificially enhanced with synthetic combat modifications. The creature is not naturally occurring. The words hit Marcus like a plasma blast to the chest. Zalarian Emperor's bloodline meant nobility among the galaxy's most feared warrior race. The Zalarians had conquered 17 star systems before mysteriously vanishing 3 centuries ago. Their technology and genetic engineering capabilities had been legendary, surpassing even human innovation. Shadow approached his chair, her movements fluid and predatory. She'd grown intelligent enough to understand basic human speech, though she couldn't respond vocally. Her species communicated through telepathic impulses that Marcus couldn't receive. Yet somehow, they developed their own crude sign language over the past weeks. The cub raised one paw and tapped twice on the deck plating, then scratched once. In their developing code, this meant hungry and meat. Marcus reached into his supply locker and pulled out a protein ration bar. Shadow sniffed it disdainfully and shook her head. I know it's not fresh meat, but it's all we have until we reach the next trading station, Marcus explained. The cub's dietary requirements had become increasingly demanding. She'd started refusing processed foods entirely, craving only fresh, raw protein. Her teeth had sharpened into razor points capable of tearing through steel plating. Shadow suddenly tensed, her ears swiveling toward the ship's hull. A low growl rumbled from her throat, barely audible, but somehow causing vibrations throughout the entire cargo bay. Marcus felt the sound in his bones. "Captain, I'm detecting 3 vessels approaching from our starboard side," the computer announced. "Configuration matches hegemony patrol ships." Marcus cursed under his breath. The hegemony controlled this sector of space with an iron fist, and they didn't appreciate independent salvagers operating in their territory. He'd been careful to stay in neutral zones, but space lanes shifted constantly in this contested region. "Open a communication channel," he ordered, standing from his chair. Shadow immediately positioned herself between Marcus and the main viewport, her hackles rising. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the angular features of a hegemony captain. The alien skin held a sickly green tint, and multiple cybernetic implants covered half his skull. These were Vorthak, a species known for their aggressive territorial expansion and zero tolerance for trespassers. "Human vessel, you are in violation of hegemony space. Submit to immediate boarding and inspection," the captain commanded, his voice harsh and guttural. Marcus kept his expression neutral. "This is independent salvage vessel Morningstar. According to my navigation charts, we're in neutral territory. Your charts are outdated. This system came under hegemony control 6 standard days ago. You will prepare for boarding or be destroyed." The communication ended abruptly. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Hegemony boarding parties were notorious for confiscating anything valuable they found, including exotic alien specimens. If they discovered Shadow's true nature, they'd either kill her for being dangerous or cage her for experimentation. Shadow seemed to understand the threat. Her size suddenly began increasing, muscles expanding beneath her fur. Marcus watched in amazement as the cub transformed before his eyes, growing from knee-high to nearly chest level in seconds. Her claws extended into gleaming talons that could easily shred through bulkhead plating. "Easy, girl," Marcus whispered, though he wasn't sure if he was trying to calm Shadow or himself. The creature's genetic modifications were clearly designed for combat situations. She was becoming exactly what her extinct creators had engineered her to be. The ship shuddered as magnetic clamps locked onto the hull. Marcus heard the distinctive whine of plasma cutters beginning to slice through his airlock. The hegemony wasn't waiting for permission to board. He quickly activated his ship's internal security protocols, sealing all compartments except the main cargo bay. If the boarders wanted to search his vessel, they have to go through him first. And now, apparently, through Shadow as well. The feline creature had positioned herself in a perfect ambush spot behind a stack of salvaged equipment. Her intelligence continued to amaze Marcus. She understood tactics, strategy, and timing in ways that suggested extensive genetic programming. Heavy footsteps echoed through the ship as the boarding party made their way toward the cargo bay. Marcus counted at least 6 distinct sets of boots, all wearing the heavy magnetic soles favored by hegemony shock troops. These weren't ordinary patrol officers. Someone had sent their elite forces. The cargo bay doors hissed open, and Vorthack soldiers entered in tactical formation. They wore full combat armor and carried plasma rifles set to lethal settings. Behind them came their captain and a figure Marcus didn't recognize, a tall, pale humanoid in flowing robes who radiated an aura of menace. "Salvager Marcus Chun," the captain announced, reading from a datapad. "You are under arrest for possession of stolen hegemony property and trafficking in prohibited biological specimens." Marcus felt confusion wash over him. "I haven't stolen anything from the hegemony. My salvage license is current, and I operate exclusively in neutral space." The robed figure stepped forward, and Marcus noticed his eyes glowed with an unnatural purple light. "The creature you harbor belongs to the hegemony by right of conquest. The Zalarian Empire fell to our forces, and all their genetic legacy became our property." So they knew about Shadow. Somehow, the hegemony had tracked the cub to his ship. Marcus began to understand why the extinct feline had been abandoned on Zirian Prime. Someone had been trying to keep her away from these collectors. "I found an abandoned animal on a dead world," Marcus said carefully. There was no indication of ownership. "Ignorance is not a defense," the purple-eyed figure replied. "That creature represents 3 centuries of hegemony genetic research. She is the last surviving specimen of the Zalarian royal predator line, enhanced with our most advanced combat modifications." The truth struck Marcus like a physical blow. The hegemony hadn't just conquered the Zalarian Empire. They'd stolen their genetic engineering technology and improved upon it. Shadow wasn't just a rescued animal. She was a living weapon, bred and modified for purposes he could barely imagine. One of the soldiers raised his plasma rifle toward the supply crates where Shadow was hiding. "Bioscanners indicate the specimen is concealed behind those containers." "Orders, sir." The captain smiled, revealing rows of sharpened teeth. "Stun setting. We need the creature alive for transport to the research facility." That's when Shadow struck. The feline creature launched herself from concealment with impossible speed and grace. Her first leap carried her directly onto the nearest soldier, her claws ripping through his armor like paper. Before the Vorthack could even scream, Shadow had rebounded off the walls and taken down a second trooper. Marcus dove for cover behind his pilot's chair as plasma bolts filled the air. The remaining soldiers were firing wildly, trying to track Shadow's lightning-fast movements. The creature moved like liquid death, flowing between their shots and striking with surgical precision. The purple-eyed figure raised his hands, and energy crackled between his fingers. Some kind of psychic power, Marcus realized. The man was a hegemony mind-ripper, capable of controlling organic brains through telepathic force. "Submit, beast," the mind-ripper commanded, directing his power toward Shadow. "You will obey your genetic programming." For a moment, Shadow froze mid-leap. The psychic assault had found its target, and Marcus watched in horror as the creature's golden eyes dimmed. Her muscles went slack, and she dropped heavily to the deck plating. But then, something unexpected happened. Shadow's eyes blazed brighter than ever before, and she released a roar that shattered several of the cargo bay's light fixtures. The sound carried harmonics that human ears couldn't properly process, but Marcus felt its power in every cell of his body. The Mind Ripper staggered backward, his concentration broken. "Impossible," he gasped. "No organic mind can resist psychic domination." Shadow had resumed her attack with renewed fury. Her roar had apparently triggered some kind of genetic defense mechanism, protecting her consciousness from external control. The remaining soldiers were trying to retreat, but the creature moved too fast for escape. Within minutes, the entire boarding party lay unconscious or worse, scattered across the cargo bay floor. Shadow stood in the center of the destruction, her fur standing on end and electricity crackling between her claws. The genetic modifications weren't just physical, they included energy projection capabilities. Marcus slowly emerged from cover, his hands raised peacefully. "It's over, girl. You did good." Shadow turned toward him, and for a moment Marcus saw something almost human in her golden eyes. Intelligence, recognition, and perhaps even gratitude. Then, she began shrinking back to her normal size, the combat modifications retracting as the immediate threat passed. The ship's computer chimed softly. "Captain, the hegemony vessels are powering weapons. Recommend immediate departure." Marcus didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted to the pilot's console and began emergency startup procedures. His ship's engines roared to life as he plotted a jump vector to the nearest neutral system. "Hold on, Shadow," he called as the ship accelerated away from the hegemony patrol. Plasma bolts streaked past the viewport, missing them by mere meters. The jump to hyperspace felt like salvation. Marcus collapsed into his chair, adrenaline slowly fading from his system. He looked at Shadow, who had curled up near his feet and appeared to be sleeping peacefully. The innocent appearance was completely deceiving now. He'd seen what she could become when threatened. "Computer, analyze the boarding party's equipment. I need to know how they tracked us." Analysis complete. The hegemony forces carried genetic scanners specifically calibrated to detect Zolarian DNA signatures. They have been systematically hunting surviving specimens across multiple star systems. The implications were staggering. If the hegemony was actively searching for creatures like Shadow, then Marcus and his ship were now marked targets. They could never return to civilized space safely. But as he watched the small feline creature sleep trustingly beside his chair, Marcus realized he didn't care about the danger. Shadow had chosen to protect him when she could have simply escaped during the confusion. That kind of loyalty deserved to be returned. "Set course for the frontier zones," he commanded. Time to disappear for a while. The frontier represented the edge of known space, where lawless settlements and independent colonies thrived beyond hegemony reach. It would be dangerous, but no more dangerous than staying in civilized systems with a target on their backs. Shadow stirred and looked up at him with those impossibly intelligent golden eyes. Marcus reached down to scratch behind her ears, and she purred softly. The sound had none of the terrifying harmonics from her combat roar, just the peaceful rumble of a content animal. "Don't worry, girl," Marcus murmured. "We're going to figure this out together. Whatever you were bred for, whatever they did to your genetics, you get to choose your own path now." The ship streaked through hyperspace toward an uncertain future, carrying a human salvager and the last surviving royal predator of a dead empire. Behind them, the hegemony forces regrouped and began their pursuit. The hunt for Shadow had only just begun, but Marcus Chun had spent his entire adult life surviving on the edges of space, making a living from the discarded remnants of fallen civilizations. He understood better than most that sometimes the most valuable treasures were the ones others had thrown away. Shadow stretched and padded over to the viewport, pressing her nose against the transparent aluminum. Stars streaked past in brilliant lines of light as they traveled toward the unknown. Whatever challenges awaited them in the frontier zones, they would face them together. The galaxy's deadliest predator had found herself a human partner, and neither the hegemony nor any other force in known space was prepared for what that partnership might become. The frontier station called Haven's Rest looked exactly like what it was, a collection of salvaged ship hulls and asteroid mining equipment welded together in a rough approximation of civilization. Marcus guided his ship toward one of the smaller docking bays, hoping to avoid attention. In the 3 weeks since their escape from hegemony space, he and Shadow had kept a low profile while traveling through the lawless frontier zones. Shadow had grown again during their journey. She now stood waist-high to Marcus. Her midnight fur developed a new pattern of silver markings that seemed to shift and flow in certain lighting. More importantly, her intelligence had continued expanding at an alarming rate. She'd learned to operate simple ship controls and had begun showing signs of understanding complex tactical concepts. "Remember what we discussed," Marcus said quietly as they prepared to dock. "Stay small and harmless looking. The people here might not react well to seeing what you can really do." Shadow tilted her head and made a soft chirping sound, her way of acknowledging his instructions. She then began the now familiar transformation, shrinking down to roughly the size of a large house cat. The silver markings dimmed until they were barely visible, and her golden eyes lost their intimidating glow. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thunk. Marcus gathered his trade goods and headed for the airlock with Shadow trotting beside him like any normal pet. He'd learned to appreciate her acting abilities. Very few observers would suspect the small creature could tear through combat armor or generate electrical discharges powerful enough to disable military equipment. Haven's Rest buzzed with the controlled chaos typical of frontier trading posts. Humans, aliens, and various hybrid species mingled freely, all united by their distance from governmental authority. Marcus made his way through the crowded corridors toward the central marketplace, where independent traders hawked everything from weapons to exotic foods. He'd barely entered the main trading area when a voice called out behind him. Well, if it isn't Marcus Chun, the ghost salvager." Marcus turned to see a familiar figure approaching, Captain Sarah Voss, commander of the independent freighter Stellarwind. They'd worked together several times over the years, though always carefully maintaining professional distance. In their line of work, getting too close to anyone could prove fatal. "Sarah," Marcus nodded politely. "I heard you were running cargo to the outer colonies." "Contract fell through when the hegemony blockaded the shipping lanes," she replied, her eyes studying Shadow with obvious curiosity. "Strange times when even the frontier isn't safe anymore. Nice cat, by the way. Didn't know you were the pet-keeping type." Shadow had positioned herself partially behind Marcus's legs, projecting an image of nervous timidity. The performance was so convincing that Marcus almost believed it himself. "Recent acquisition," he said casually. "Found her on a salvage run. She's good company on long hauls." Sarah's expression shifted subtly, and Marcus caught the warning look in her eyes. "Might want to be careful about the company you keep these days. Word is the hegemony's put bounties on some very unusual salvage items. Big money for anyone who can deliver." Before Marcus could respond, Shadow tensed against his leg. Her disguise remained perfect, but he felt the slight vibration that indicated she'd detected a threat. Marcus casually scanned the marketplace while continuing his conversation with Sarah. "What kind of salvage items?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Genetic specimens, ancient technology, anything connected to the old Zalarian Empire, Sarah replied quietly. Rumor has it they're offering enough credits to buy a small planet for the right find. Marcus spotted the threat Shadow had sensed. 3 figures in nondescript clothing were positioning themselves around the marketplace, trying to look casual while clearly conducting surveillance. Their movements were too coordinated, too professional for ordinary traders. Bounty hunters, most likely. Thanks for the warning, Marcus said to Sarah. Think I'll browse the market and head out soon. Good idea, she agreed. Take care of yourself, Marcus, and that cat of yours. As Sarah melted back into the crowd, Marcus began moving toward the nearest exit. Shadow stayed close to his side, maintaining her harmless appearance while her head swiveled slightly to track the bounty hunter's movements. Her intelligence had reached the point where she could assess tactical situations as well as any trained soldier. They'd almost reached the corridor leading back to the docking bays when one of the hunters made his move. Marcus heard the distinctive whine of a stun weapon charging and dove sideways, pulling Shadow with him behind a vendor's stall selling mining equipment. Marcus Chun, a gravelly voice called out. You're coming with us, dead or alive. The hegemony doesn't care which. The marketplace erupted in chaos as vendors and customers scattered for cover. Marcus drew his sidearm while mentally calculating escape routes. 3 armed bounty hunters in an enclosed space with limited cover. Not good odds. Shadow suddenly looked up at him with those golden eyes, and Marcus saw something there that stopped him cold. She was asking permission. Permission to drop her disguise and become what her genetics had designed her to be. Do it, Marcus whispered. The transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. Shadow exploded upward and outward, her size quadrupling in seconds. The silver markings along her fur blazed to life, crackling with visible energy. Her claws extended into gleaming weapons, and her eyes burned with predatory fire. The first bounty hunter rounded the corner of their hiding spot, just as Shadow completed her change. The man's confident expression shifted to pure terror as he found himself face-to-face with nearly 400 pounds of genetically enhanced apex predator. Shadow's roar shattered vendor stalls and sent shoppers fleeing in panic. The sound carried subsonic frequencies that triggered primal fear responses in most sentient species. The bounty hunter dropped his weapon and stumbled backward, his nervous system temporarily overloaded by the acoustic assault. The creature flowed over the man like liquid lightning, her claws raking across his body armor with sparks flying. The armor held for roughly 2 seconds before giving way completely. The hunter collapsed, unconscious but breathing. The second hunter had taken cover behind a weapons vendor stall and was firing plasma bolts at Shadow's position. The creature moved between the shots with impossible grace, using debris and vendor stalls as cover while closing the distance. Her tactical intelligence was fully engaged now, and Marcus watched in amazement as she outmaneuvered a trained professional. When Shadow reached the weapons stall, she didn't go around or over the cover. She went through it. Her claws sliced through the reinforced metal like tissue paper, and she emerged behind the startled hunter before he could react. One precise strike to the base of his skull, and the second threat was neutralized. The third hunter had positioned himself near the marketplace entrance, blocking their escape route. This one was smarter than his companions and had activated an energy shield generator. His plasma rifle was set to full military power, and he was firing controlled bursts designed to drive Shadow into a kill zone. Marcus realized the hunter was herding Shadow toward a trap. The man had probably studied Zalarian combat footage and understood how royal predators fought. But he made one critical error. He'd focused entirely on Shadow and forgotten about her human partner. Marcus circled around behind the vendor stalls, using the chaos of the fleeing crowd as cover. When he reached a position roughly perpendicular to the hunter's line of sight, he took careful aim with his sidearm and fired 3 rapid shots. The hunter's energy shield deflected the plasma bolts, but the impact caused the generator to flicker momentarily. In that split second of vulnerability, Shadow struck. She launched herself through the air in a perfect combat leap, her trajectory calculated to exploit the exact moment of shield failure. Her claws found the gaps in the hunter's armor with surgical precision, and the man dropped to the deck unconscious before he could cry out. The entire fight had lasted less than 3 minutes. Shadow stood among the defeated bounty hunters, her silver markings still crackling with residual energy. The marketplace had emptied completely except for Marcus and a few brave vendors peering out from behind their reinforced stalls. "Time to go," Marcus said quietly. Shadow immediately began shrinking back to her disguised size, the transformation somehow even more unsettling than her combat form. Within seconds, she appeared to be nothing more dangerous than an ordinary pet cat. The unconscious bounty hunters would wake up with stories no one would believe. Marcus and Shadow made their way back to the docking bays without further incident. Word of the marketplace fight would spread quickly through Haven's Rest, but the witnesses would describe a monster attack, not the actions of a small feline companion. Shadow's shape-shifting abilities were apparently more sophisticated than Marcus had realized. As they reached his ship, Marcus found Sarah Voss waiting near the airlock. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes held new understanding. "Interesting pet you've got there," she said casually. "Hope you know what you're doing." "Still figuring that out myself," Marcus admitted. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "If you need a place to lie low for a while, I know a settlement in the Kepler Nebula. Independent colony, no questions asked, and they could use someone with your salvage skills." Marcus considered the offer. The bounty hunters had found them once, which meant the hegemony's reach extended further into the frontier than he'd hoped. A hidden colony might provide the breathing room they needed. "What kind of settlement?" he asked. "Scientists mostly. Refugees from various worlds who didn't appreciate their government's policies on genetic research. They're trying to build something new out there, away from all the political nonsense. Scientists who specialized in genetic research and opposed government policies." Marcus felt pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to click together. Such people might have answers about Shadow's true nature and capabilities. "Coordinates?" he asked. Sarah transmitted the navigation data to his ship's computer. "Tell him Captain Voss sent you. And Marcus, be careful. That cat of yours is special, but special often means dangerous in ways you haven't discovered yet." As Sarah departed, Marcus sealed the airlock and began pre-flight preparations. Shadow had curled up in her favorite spot near the pilot's chair, looking perfectly innocent once again. But Marcus could see the intelligence burning behind those amber eyes. "Well, girl," he said as the ship lifted away from Haven's Rest. "Looks like we're going to meet some people who might understand what you really are." Shadow made her soft, chirping sound and stretched luxuriously. For the first time since finding her on Zirian Prime, Marcus felt hopeful about their situation. Maybe somewhere in the Kepler Nebula, they'd find answers about her mysterious past and the forces hunting them. The ship entered hyperspace, carrying its unlikely crew toward an uncertain but potentially enlightening future. Behind them, Haven's Rest buzzed with wild stories about monsters in the marketplace, while 3 unconscious bounty hunters slowly began to wake up with gaps in their memory and damaged equipment. The hunt for Shadow continued, but now Marcus and his extraordinary companion had a destination and possibly allies waiting among the stars. The galaxy's deadliest predator was about to meet the galaxy's most dedicated scientists, and the combination might prove more dangerous to the hegemony than anyone could imagine. The Kepler Nebula stretched across space like a cosmic oil painting, its swirling gases painted in shades of purple and gold by the radiation of hidden stars. Marcus guided his ship through the predetermined navigation route Sarah Voss had provided, following a path that wound between gravitational anomalies and radiation pockets that would confuse most tracking systems. Shadow had been restless during the 3-day journey through hyperspace, pacing the cargo bay and occasionally staring at the star charts with what Marcus had learned to recognize as deep concentration. Her intelligence continued to evolve at an unprecedented rate, and he begun to suspect she understood far more about their situation than she could communicate. Incoming transmission on emergency frequency, the ship's computer announced as they dropped out of hyperspace near their destination. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a human woman in her 50s with graying hair and intense blue eyes. Behind her, Marcus could see the interior of what appeared to be a sophisticated laboratory. Unknown vessel. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez of the new Prometheus Research Station, the woman said. State your business and authorization codes. Dr. Vasquez, my name is Marcus Chun. Captain Sarah Voss provided your coordinates and suggested you might be interested in a unique research opportunity. The woman's expression shifted to one of keen interest. What kind of research opportunity, Mr. Chun? Marcus glanced down at Shadow, who had positioned herself where she could observe the transmission. Her golden eyes were fixed on Dr. Vasquez with an intensity that suggested recognition, though Marcus couldn't understand what she might be recognizing. I have a biological specimen that might interest your team, something the hegemony has been very eager to acquire. I see, Dr. Vasquez replied carefully. And you're offering this specimen for study rather than turning it over to the authorities? The authorities want to weaponize it. I'm hoping you might have different intentions. There was a long pause as Dr. Vasquez studied Marcus's face through the transmission. Finally, she nodded. Docket Bay 7. Come alone and bring your specimen. Be advised that our station maintains strict security protocols. The transmission ended, and Marcus began his approach to the research station. What he saw emerging from a nebula's cosmic fog took his breath away. New Prometheus wasn't just a research facility. It was a massive city floating in space, its modular construction allowing for continuous expansion. Gardens and observation decks were visible through transparent sections, and docking bays accommodated everything from small personal craft to large cargo vessels. Impressive, Marcus murmured. Someone's been busy out here. Shadow had moved to the viewport and was pressing her nose against the transparent aluminum. Her body language suggested excitement rather than anxiety, which Marcus found encouraging. Whatever her genetically programmed instincts were telling her, they approved of this place. Docking procedures went smoothly, and Marcus soon found himself walking through corridors that buzzed with scientific activity. Researchers from dozens of species moved purposefully between laboratories, and the air hummed with the sound of advanced equipment. Shadow trotted beside him in her diminished form, drawing curious glances but no alarm. Dr. Vasquez met them in a comfortable reception area adjacent to the main laboratory complex. She was accompanied by two other researchers, a tall, thin man who appeared to be human, and reptilian alien whose species Marcus didn't recognize. Mr. Chun, Dr. Vasquez extended her hand in greeting. Welcome to New Prometheus. I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of genetic research. This is Dr. James Patterson, our xenobiology specialist, and Dr. Sith, our expert in ancient alien civilizations. Marcus shook hands with the human researchers and nodded politely to Dr. Sith. Thank you for seeing us. I should warn you that my companion here is more than she appears to be. Most interesting specimens are, Dr. Vasquez replied with a smile. Would you mind if we conducted our initial examination in Laboratory 5? It's our most secure facility, designed for studying potentially dangerous organisms. Marcus looked down at Shadow, who chirped softly and rubbed against his leg, her signal that she felt comfortable with the proposed arrangement. That should be fine. Laboratory 5 turned out to be a spacious chamber with reinforced walls and multiple layers of containment fields. Advanced scanning equipment lined the walls, and Marcus recognized several pieces of technology that would cost more than his entire ship to acquire. Before we begin, Dr. Vasquez said carefully, I should mention that we've heard rumors about hegemony forces hunting for Zalarian genetic specimens. Would this examination put our station at risk? Marcus appreciated her directness. The hegemony is definitely hunting us, but they'd have to find this place first. Your security seems adequate. We certainly hope so, Dr. Patterson added. We've been conducting research the hegemony would consider highly illegal. Our entire colony exists because we refuse to surrender our scientific independence to their expansion policies. Dr. stepped forward, his reptilian features showing keen interest. If I may ask, where exactly did you acquire this specimen? The circumstances might be relevant to our analysis. I found her abandoned on Zirian Prime, Marcus replied. She was just a small cub then, barely alive. I've been caring for her for about 2 months now. The three scientists exchanged significant glances. Dr. Vasquez activated the laboratory's recording systems before responding. Mr. Chun, Zirian Prime was the site of a major hegemony research facility until approximately 6 months ago. Something catastrophic happened there. The entire installation was destroyed, and all personnel were evacuated. Official reports claimed it was an industrial accident, but our sources suggest otherwise. Marcus felt pieces of the puzzle beginning to align in his mind. What kind of research were they conducting? Genetic reconstruction of extinct Zalarian species, Dr. Patterson answered. The hegemony had acquired fragmentary DNA samples from various archaeological sites and was attempting to recreate the Empire's most advanced biological weapons. Shadow had been sitting quietly during this conversation, but now she moved to the center of the laboratory and looked directly at Dr. Vasquez. What happened next surprised everyone present. The feline creature began to grow, but slowly and deliberately rather than with the explosive speed Marcus had witnessed during combat situations. Her silver markings emerged gradually, pulsing with gentle light rather than crackling with energy. When the transformation completed, she stood at her full size but projected an aura of calm intelligence rather than predatory menace. Dr. Sith hissed softly in what Marcus recognized as an expression of awe among his species. Magnificent, the reptilian scientist whispered. A genuine royal predator, alive and healthy. Shadow approached Dr. Vasquez and performed a complex gesture with her front paws, something that looked almost like a formal greeting or salute. The doctor's eyes widened in recognition. She's trying to communicate using ancient Zalarian ceremonial protocols, Dr. Vasquez breathed. The genetic memory is intact. This isn't just a recreated species. She retains the cultural knowledge of her ancestors. Marcus watched in fascination as Shadow continued her elaborate greeting ritual. Her movements were precise and meaningful, clearly conveying specific information through a sophisticated gestural language. Dr. Patterson was frantically taking notes while studying the displays from various scanning devices. The genetic complexity is extraordinary, he reported. She's not just Solarian. There are human DNA markers integrated throughout her genetic structure. Human markers? Marcus asked, confused. The hegemony was apparently trying to create hybrid organisms, Dr. Vasquez explained, her attention divided between Shadow and the scanner readouts. They wanted the physical capabilities of Zalarian predators, combined with human intelligence and adaptability. But that would mean, Marcus began, that she's partially human. Yes, Dr. Patterson confirmed. Roughly 30% human DNA, integrated at the cellular level. It's the most sophisticated genetic engineering I've ever encountered. Shadow had completed her ceremonial greeting and now approached Marcus. She gently placed one massive paw on his shoulder and looked into his eyes. For a moment, Marcus felt a strange sensation, almost like someone was trying to speak directly into his mind. Did you feel that? Dr. Vasquez asked urgently. She's attempting telepathic contact. Marcus nodded, still somewhat stunned. Like voices, but not quite voices. The human DNA markers include genetic modifications for psionic potential, Dr. Patterson explained excitedly. The hegemony was trying to create telepathic super soldiers. She's trying to establish a mental link with you. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Shadow wasn't just an intelligent animal. She was a hybrid being with human-level consciousness trapped in a feline body. Her loyalty to him wasn't just pack bonding or conditioning. She was capable of genuine friendship and partnership. Dr. Sith had been studying data from the archaeological databases while the others examined Shadow. Now he looked up with an expression of deep concern. Dr. Vasquez, we may have a more serious situation than we realized, the reptilian scientist announced. According to Zalarian historical records, royal predators were never created as solitary beings. They were bred to work in bonded pairs with Zalarian nobility. Meaning what exactly? Marcus asked. Meaning she's incomplete without her bonded partner. The genetic programming expects her to be part of a symbiotic pair, with telepathic links allowing perfect coordination during combat or other activities. Marcus felt Shadow's massive form press gently against him, and the telepathic sensation grew stronger. Suddenly, concepts and emotions began flowing between their minds. Not words, but pure understanding. Shadow was trying to forge the telepathic bond her genetics demanded, using Marcus as her chosen partner. The human DNA modifications were designed to make cross-species bonding possible, Dr. Vasquez realized. The hegemony wasn't just creating weapons. They were creating perfect partnerships between human handlers and Zalarian predators. Can the bonding process be safely completed? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Shadow had been trying to establish this connection since the day he found her. In theory, yes, Dr. Patterson replied, but it would be irreversible. You'd be linked to her for life, sharing thoughts, emotions, and possibly even life force. Ancient Zalarian texts describe bonded pairs who lived for centuries. Their lifespans extended through the symbiotic connection. Marcus looked into Shadow's golden eyes and saw infinite intelligence looking back at him. She was offering him partnership beyond anything he'd ever imagined, a connection that would transcend the barriers between species and create something entirely new. What are the risks? He asked. Unknown, Dr. Vasquez admitted. This has never been attempted between a human and a genetically modified Zalarian hybrid. You could die from the neural feedback, or the process could drive you insane. On the other hand, it might work perfectly and create the galaxy's first true human-alien partnership. Shadow made a soft sound, almost like a purr, but with complex harmonics that conveyed reassurance and affection. Through their partial mental link, Marcus felt her confidence that the process would succeed. Her genetic memory included knowledge of how the bonding worked, passed down through generations of Zalarian nobility. I need time to think about this, Marcus said quietly. Dr. Vasquez nodded understandingly. Of course. In the meantime, we'd like to continue studying her genetic structure and documenting her capabilities. The information could be crucial for understanding what the hegemony was really trying to accomplish. As the scientists began their detailed examinations, Marcus found himself contemplating a decision that would change his life forever. Shadow had already proven herself to be more than a companion or even a partner. She was offering to become something that had never existed before, a true fusion of human and alien consciousness. The galaxy's deadliest predator had chosen him as her bonded partner, and now Marcus had to decide whether he was brave enough to accept the offer. Outside the laboratory, the nebula swirled with cosmic beauty, hiding secrets and possibilities among its stellar nurseries. Whatever he decided, Marcus knew that their story was far from over. The hegemony would continue hunting them. Other forces would emerge to challenge their partnership, and the galaxy itself would have to adapt to the existence of something it had never seen before. But first, he had to choose whether to become more than human or remain forever incomplete. Marcus Chun sat in the observation lounge of New Prometheus Research Station, watching the nebula's colors shift and swirl beyond the transparent walls. 3 days had passed since Dr. Vasquez and her team had revealed the truth about Shadow's nature, and he still hadn't made his decision about the bonding process. The weight of choosing to fundamentally alter his humanity pressed down on him like the gravity of a heavy world. Shadow lay curled beside his chair, maintaining her normal size, but with her silver markings glowing softly in response to his emotional state. Their partial telepathic connection had been growing stronger, allowing them to share simple concepts and emotions. Marcus could feel her patience and understanding, but also her deep longing to complete the bond that her genetics demanded. "Trouble sleeping?" Dr. Vasquez asked as she entered the lounge, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Hard to sleep when you're contemplating becoming something the galaxy has never seen before," Marcus replied, accepting the offered cup gratefully. "I've been reviewing the historical data about Zalarian bonded pairs," she said, settling into a nearby chair. The relationship was always described as voluntary on both sides. Even the royal predators had the freedom to reject potential partners if the psychological compatibility wasn't adequate. Marcus looked down at Shadow, who had raised her head to listen to their conversation. And if someone was rejected, the predator would enter a state similar to hibernation until a suitable partner appeared, sometimes for decades. They were engineered to be patient. Dr. Vasquez sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "The fact that Shadow is actively pursuing a bond with you suggests she's found exactly what her genetics were programmed to seek." "Which is what, exactly?" "Courage, intelligence, loyalty, and the ability to make difficult decisions under pressure. Based on what I've observed over the past 3 days, you possess all those qualities in abundance." Marcus felt Shadow's warm presence in his mind, a constant background sensation that had become as natural as breathing. Through their connection, he could sense her absolute confidence in their compatibility. She wasn't just offering partnership. She was offering herself completely, trusting him with her life and consciousness. "Dr. Vasquez," Marcus said quietly, "what aren't you telling me about this bonding process?" The scientist set down her coffee cup and looked directly at him. "The process isn't just about creating a telepathic link. According to Zalarian texts, successful bonding fundamentally alters both partners at the genetic level. You wouldn't just be connected to Shadow. You'd become something new, a hybrid consciousness that combines the best aspects of both species. And the worst aspects? Unknown. The Zalarians never recorded any failed bonding attempts, which suggests either perfect success rates or careful censorship of negative outcomes." Shadow suddenly tensed, her attention focused on something beyond the lounge's transparent walls. Through their partial link, Marcus felt her alarm and immediately moved to the viewport to see what had captured her attention. 3 ships were emerging from the nebula's gas clouds, their angular design immediately recognizable as hegemony vessels. These weren't patrol ships or research vessels. They were full military cruisers, bristling with weapons and carrying enough firepower to reduce New Prometheus to cosmic debris. Alert klaxons began sounding throughout the station as the threat was detected by the automated defense systems. Dr. Vasquez rushed to a communication panel and activated the emergency channels. "All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. We have hostile vessels approaching." Marcus felt his stomach drop as the implications became clear. The hegemony had found them despite all the station's security measures. Either they'd been betrayed, or the aliens' tracking capabilities were more sophisticated than anyone had realized. Shadow had begun her transformation without being asked, growing to full combat size while her silver markings blazed with energy. Through their mental link, Marcus felt her readiness for battle, but also her concern for his safety and the safety of the scientist who had shown them kindness. Dr. Patterson's voice crackled through the communication system from the main laboratory. "Dr. Vasquez, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the hegemony ships. They're powering weapons systems and launching boarding pods." The station shuddered as the first wave of attacks struck the outer defensive shields. Marcus could see the energy discharges through the viewport, brilliant flashes of destructive force that would have vaporized a small salvage ship instantly. "They're not here for negotiation," Dr. Vasquez said grimly. This is a full military assault. Marcus felt Shadow's consciousness pressing against his mind with urgent intensity. Through their partial bond, she was trying to communicate something crucial about the tactical situation. Images flashed between their minds. The layout of the station, potential defensive positions, and, most importantly, the location of the station's main reactor. Shadow thinks they're going to try to capture the reactor intact, Marcus said, translating her telepathic communication. They want the research data and the advanced equipment, not just to destroy everything. That gives us an advantage, Dr. Vasquez replied. They'll have to limit their firepower to avoid damaging what they want to steal. The station shuddered again as boarding pods attached to the outer hull. Emergency containment fields activated automatically, but Marcus knew they wouldn't hold indefinitely against military-grade cutting equipment. Dr. Vasquez, he said quietly, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. If I complete the bonding with Shadow now, will it give us a better chance of defending this place? The scientist looked at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. The bonded pairs described in Zalarian texts were capable of extraordinary feats. Perfect tactical coordination, shared sensory input, and combined psionic abilities that exceeded what either species could achieve alone. But, Marcus, if something goes wrong during the process, we'll all be dead anyway if the hegemony takes this station, Marcus interrupted. Shadow, are you ready? The massive feline creature moved to his side and placed one paw gently on his hand. Through their partial link, Marcus felt her absolute certainty and willingness to proceed. Whatever risks the bonding process involved, she was prepared to face them together. Dr. Vasquez activated an emergency medical scanner and positioned it near them. If we're doing this, I want to monitor the neural patterns and genetic changes. The data might be crucial if anyone else ever attempts this procedure. Marcus knelt beside Shadow and placed his hands on either side of her massive head. Her golden eyes held his gaze as the telepathic connection between them began to deepen and intensify. What had been gentle whispers of thought became a flowing river of shared consciousness. The bonding process was unlike anything Marcus could have imagined. He felt his awareness expanding beyond the boundaries of his human brain, encompassing Shadow's predatory instincts and genetic memories. In return, she gained access to his human creativity and tactical intelligence. Pain lanced through Marcus's nervous system as his genetic structure began to shift and adapt. Dr. Vasquez's medical scanner registered impossible readings as both human and Zalarian DNA patterns merged and recombined. Through the agony, Marcus felt Shadow experiencing her own transformation as her consciousness expanded to accommodate human thought patterns. Then, suddenly, the pain vanished and was replaced by a sensation of completeness Marcus had never experienced. He and Shadow were still separate individuals, but there were also something more, a unified consciousness that could function as either one being or two, depending on the tactical requirements of the moment. Marcus opened his eyes and found that his vision had changed dramatically. He could see electromagnetic spectra that had been invisible before, and his hearing had expanded to encompass the full range of sounds Shadow could detect. More importantly, he could sense the emotional states and hostile intentions of every life form within a considerable radius. Shadow had also been altered by the bonding. Her intelligence had expanded further, and Marcus could feel her consciousness operating on levels that approached or exceeded human capability. They were no longer predator and companion. They were partners in the truest sense of the word. Incredible, Dr. Vasquez breathed, studying the medical scanner's readings. Your genetic structures have stabilized into something completely new. You're both still recognizably your original species, but with enhancements that the laboratory door exploded inward as hegemony shock troopers breached the final containment barriers. 6 heavily armed soldiers in full combat armor stormed into the room, their weapons tracking for targets. Marcus and Shadow moved as one being. through their shared consciousness, they coordinated their response with perfect timing and positioning. Marcus dove for cover behind the medical equipment while drawing his sidearm, and Shadow launched herself directly at the nearest trooper. But now their attacks were synchronized at a level that transcended normal teamwork. Marcus knew exactly where Shadow would be at every moment, and she could anticipate his movements with perfect accuracy. When Marcus fired his weapon, Shadow positioned herself to drive enemies directly into his line of fire. When Shadow struck with her claws, Marcus provided covering fire that prevented the soldiers from coordinating their response. The hegemony troopers were elite professionals, but they were facing something their training had never prepared them for. Marcus and Shadow fought as a single organism with multiple bodies, their shared consciousness allowing for tactical coordination that no conventional military unit could achieve. Within minutes, all 6 soldiers lay unconscious or incapacitated on the laboratory floor. Marcus and Shadow stood among them, neither breathing heavily despite the intense combat. Their enhanced physiology had improved both endurance and recovery speed beyond baseline human or Zolarian capabilities. The main reactor core, Dr. Vasquez said urgently, "They'll be sending a larger force there next." Marcus nodded, and through his link with Shadow, he could sense the locations and intentions of enemy forces throughout the station. The bonding had granted them a form of tactical omniscience within a limited radius. 12 more soldiers heading for the reactor level, he reported. 2 technical specialists with them, probably to bypass the security systems. "Can you stop them?" Dr. Vasquez asked. Marcus looked at Shadow, and through their shared consciousness, they evaluated the tactical situation with superhuman speed and accuracy. They were outnumbered, but they had advantages the enemy couldn't anticipate. "Yes," Marcus replied simply. As they moved through the station toward the reactor core, Marcus marveled at the changes the bonding had brought. He and Shadow shared not just thoughts and sensory input, but also skill sets and capabilities. He had access to her predatory instincts and combat abilities, while she could draw upon his technical knowledge and strategic thinking. The hegemony forces never had a chance. Marcus and Shadow moved through the station like a force of nature, systematically neutralizing enemy soldiers with precision and efficiency that bordered on the supernatural. Their combined abilities allowed them to anticipate ambushes, outmaneuver superior numbers, and strike with devastating effectiveness. When the last hegemony soldier fell unconscious in the reactor chamber, the station's defensive systems automatically sealed all breaches and activated emergency protocols. The 3 military cruisers outside found themselves facing a station that had apparently repelled their boarding action without suffering any significant casualties. Dr. Vasquez's voice crackled through the communication system. "Unknown hegemony vessels. This is new Prometheus research station. Your boarding action has failed, and your personnel are in our custody. Withdraw immediately or face destruction by our defensive systems." The threat was mostly bluff. The station's weapons were impressive, but no match for 3 military cruisers. However, the hegemony commanders had no way of knowing that their assault had been defeated by just 2 individuals. After several tense minutes, the cruisers began withdrawing toward the edge of the star system. Marcus suspected they would return with reinforcements, but that would give the station time to evacuate or prepare more substantial defenses. In the aftermath of the battle, Marcus and Shadow found themselves the subjects of intense scientific interest. Dr. Vasquez and her team documented every aspect of their transformation and enhanced capabilities, creating a record that might someday allow others to attempt similar bonding processes. But more importantly, Marcus realized that he and Shadow had become something unprecedented in galactic history. They were proof that the barriers between species could be transcended through courage, trust, and genetic engineering. Their partnership represented hope for a future where cooperation might triumph over the hegemony's policies of conquest and exploitation. As the station prepared for evacuation to a more secure location deeper in the nebula, Marcus stood once again in the observation lounge watching the cosmic dance of gas and starlight. Shadow rested beside him, her silver markings glowing softly in harmony with his own enhanced biorhythms. Through their bond, they shared not just consciousness but dreams of the future. The galaxy was vast and filled with wonders yet to be discovered. Together, they would explore it as partners, defending those who needed protection and proving that cooperation was stronger than domination. The hegemony could send all the ships they wanted. Marcus and Shadow had become something the galaxy had never seen before, and they were just getting started.